diary. I'm not sure where to begin. Today I felt exhausted. It was a really tiring day because I had to go to the doctors. This is what happened. In the morning, I was trying to fix my catapult that I made in DT at school. I got some glue and squeezed it. Unfortunately, some of it got on my finger just as my nose started to tingle. I just had to put my finger up my nose and now it was stuck. I was terrified. I was that terrified my mother took me to A&E. We went inside and all the doctors were sniggering. I went into the doctor's room. You will not believe what happened next. I told the doctor what happened and then he said he'll have to chop off my head with a chainsaw. I shouted, "It's only a finger." Still nothing, and then I said, "Please," and he spoke. "We will put a pirate hook up your nose and it will be a better idea. And next time, instead, I'll just put a finger in my ear."
Today I felt worried. It was a really bad day because I had to go to the doctors. This is what happened. In the morning I was trying to fix my massive catapult that I made in DT at school. So I got out some glue and squeezed it. Unfortunately, I got some glue on my finger and just at that moment my nose started to tingle. Then I stupidly put my gluey finger up my runny nose and it got stuck. I didn't know what to do, so I went to the doctors and he said he hasn't seen anything like it before. So he said he would have to chop off my precious head. I felt scared and said it's only my finger, but he would still have to chop off my head. You won't believe what happened next. He went to the secret cabinet with a key and took out a massive axe. I shouted, "I am never coming here again!" Like my life was on the line. Then he suggested to use a fishing hook. I told him I would never stick my finger up my nose. Instead, I will put it in my waxy ear.
Dear Diary, I'm not sure where in the world I should start. Today I felt flabbergasted. It was a really miserable day because I had to go to the doctors, and this is what happened. In the morning, I was trying to fix my amazing catapult that I made in school at DT. So I got out some glue and squeezed it. Unfortunately, some of it got on my finger, and just at that time, my big pink nose started to tingle. At that moment, I quickly put my sticky wicky finger in my tingling tangling nose. It was stuck. I didn't know what to do, so I went to see a doctor who told me that he hadn't seen anything weird like this before, so he would have to chop off my bald head. He felt outraged and said it was only my tiny finger, but he still said he would have to chop off my head. You won't believe what happened next. He went to the thrilling medical cabinet. In a flash of a second, he took an repulsed axe. I watched considerably and dread. Suddenly, I shouted, "It's only my finger!" He then frustratedly suggested that he could use a hook. I told him that it was a better idea and was never going to preach my nose again. Instead, I will just slide it in my ear. What a miserable day.
Born in 1820 or 1821. Every child has the right to be free. Unfortunately, many children were born into slavery and suffered violence. Harriet Tubman, our mentor Harry Ross, was one of these children who were treated unbelievably. She was whipped, beaten, and even a lead weight was thrown at her. So risking her own life, she helped others who were slaves and led them to freedom. So Harriet decided to stand up for her right for freedom. Historians weren't sure when she was born. Harriet's nickname was Minty, and Harriet was also a secret spanned the Civil War and rescued over 700 people. One morning, when Harriet and the others were working on the cotton field, the slave managed to run away. The mean white master forbid her to get him, but Harriet didn't listen. So the mean master threw a lead weight at her head, and she fell to the ground, but she survived. After a few tough days, in 1849, she finally decided to escape to Pennsylvania, where there was no slavery. So after a few weeks in the woods, she managed to get to the border of Pennsylvania. Less than a year, she decided to go back to Maryland to help her family and other slaves to feel freedom. But she had to be aware of the slave catching. Every time when they were scared, Harriet would always be them. Harriet rescued more than 70 slaves. The system she used was called the Underground Railway. It wasn't underground or a railway, but it was a society of people who wanted to help.
The breeze was blowing in the ocean. The silk scarf that Abilene helped me wrapped around my neck billowed gently against me. On my head, I wore a traditional straw bow tie. Abilene was showing me off when I started to think that I must look handsome compared to the other rabbits. I was sitting next to Abilene on the deck chair, enjoying hugs from the breeze. Surprisingly, I was grabbed off the wooden deck chair and clothes were ripped from my body. First my expensive silk scarf, then my bright jacket and trousers. After that, I saw my golden pocket watch went flying and hit the deck and rolled merrily towards Abeline's feet. She picked it up. I thought, what is happening? That's when I saw two boys, one holding my clothes and the other one holding my scarf. Those two boys, who were called Martin and Amos, are two gormless half-wits. Then that naughty Martin saw my underwear and removed it. I was completely naked except for my hat on my head. I was mortified. The other passengers were looking at me, directing curious and embarrassed glances my way. Suddenly, I heard someone scream. It was Abilene. She was shouting, "Give him back to me, he's mine." But Amos and Martin said no and wanted to throw me. When I heard it, I was scared. I am made of china. How can I be thrown? Then I heard Abilene cry, "Please don't. He's made of china. He'll break." But Martin ignored her and threw me high over the air, naked. And I sailed naked through the air. Only a moment ago, I had thought that being naked in front of a shipload of strangers was the worst thing that could happen to me. But I was wrong with that. It was much more worse being tossed in the same naked state from the hands of one grubby, laughing boy to another. I was getting crazy of those grubby hands. Amos caught me and held me up, displaying me triumphantly. It was extremely terrible. Martin called, "Throw him back!" Amos raised his arm, getting ready to throw me. Just as he was about to throw me, Abilene tackled him, shoving her head into his stomach, upsetting the boy's aim. So it was that I did not go flying back into the grubby hands of Martin. Instead, I, Edward Delane, went overboard.
Every child has the right to be free. Unfortunately, many children were born into slavery and suffered by violence. Harriet Tubman was one of these poor children who treated unbelievably. She was whipped, beaten, and even was lead weight was thrown at her. Risking her own life, she helped other slaves to freedom. Harriet was born in slavery, but she took her name with her mother when she was 13 years old. When Harriet states she was happier than she had ever been, but that feeling didn't last long, so she knew that she would have to go for other slaves, so she knew that if she was happy, the other slaves will be happy. So she did go back and led them to freedom. When they escaped, they were even happier. Then they went to all house. Harriet called it the Underground Railway.
Harriet Tubman, born 1820, USA. Every child has the right to live a happy life and have freedom. Unfortunately, many children were born into slavery and suffered violence. Harriet Tubman was one of these poor children who were treated unbelievably. She was whipped, beaten, and a lead weight was thrown at her. Risking her own life, she helped others who were slaves and led them to their freedom. So Harriet decided to stand up for her right to freedom. Harriet's mom was a slave for the evil white master. Harriet was born in 1820 or 1821. When she was 6, she had to carry some heavy buckets of water. Harriet was going to Pennsylvania. It took a couple of weeks to go to Pennsylvania. After arriving to Pennsylvania, she remembered something, and it was her family. She went back and got her family. Harriet led her family to safety house. At a safe house.
Harriet Tubman, born 1820, USA. Every child has the right to be free. Unfortunately, many children were born into slavery and suffered violence. Harriet Tubman was one of these poor children who were treated unbelievably. She was whipped, beaten, and even a lead weight was thrown at her. Risking her own life, she helped others who were slaves and led them to freedom.
Every child has the right to be free. Unfortunately, many children were born into slavery and suffered violence. Harriet Tubman, Araminta Harriet Ross, was one of the poor people who were threatened and treated unbelievably. She was whipped and beaten and even thrown out with a lead weight. Risking her own life, she helped others who were slaves and led them to freedom. So Harriet decided to stand up for her right to freedom. When Harriet was just a child, she had to carry heavy buckets and work across a giant field. The masters were really mean and horrible that one day they hit Harriet with a lead weight on her head. After many difficult days, Harriet had enough and escaped. She arrived at Pennsylvania and stayed there for less than a year. The thing that kept playing in her mind was her family and the other slaves, so she went back to save them. As quickly and bravely as possible, Harriet led the other slaves through a network of safe houses called the Underground Railroad. Luckily, Harriet managed to lead her family to safety in Pennsylvania.